Sometimes as people read through the New Testament, they're left with an impression that Paul hated women or didn't like women, and really they go to 1 Corinthians to talk about the fact that he didn't think they should speak in church and that they should go home and ask their husbands what was said. That's taken as a pretty misogynist way of looking at things, and so maybe we're going to reject a lot of what Paul said. The reality comes to us as researchers look through what was happening in Corinth at the time, and we find actually a very different story. The reality is that the Jewish people in Corinth tended to speak Aramaic. They would speak Aramaic at home. It was their native language, and it was part of keeping their culture. The men, on the other hand, often worked on the docks or in the city or something like that, and they had to learn the native Greek so that they could converse with their Roman counterparts, which they did. Now, when Paul rode through and established churches in this area, what he wanted to do, it was going to be a mix of Jewish and Greek and Roman and whoever. They would come together. Oftentimes those preachers or those that would establish a house church were women, and we have Phoebe and a number of others that were actually the leader of that house church, and they would teach and they would preach. However, a lot of the Jewish women that maybe were more of a kind of stay-at-home mom who really just knew Aramaic would come to these meetings and would have a hard time understanding the Greek that was being spoken from the pulpit, and while they were kind of getting bored with the fact that sitting and listening to somebody speak in another language they didn't understand, they would turn and talk to each other instead. And that began to be a bit of a hindrance because they were being kind of irreverent, because they couldn't understand what was going on. And so Paul is basically saying, be reverent in church, and if you don't understand what's being said, go home and ask your husband who understood the Greek and will explain it to you in Greek. It was not meant as a slam against women, because again, oftentimes his greatest advocates and teachers and establishers of the house churches that Paul set up were women that were deeply involved in the work that he was doing, and he needed women very much, and they were treated very much as equals, as opposed to what might happen in a Jewish synagogue or even in some of the Greek temples where there might be some difference paid men to women. So, nope. As one woman said in a class, I can go back to loving Paul again. I would hope that would be the true. He's one of the great heroes that I have in my life. Anyway, thanks for being here.